Welcome everyone. We're here to discuss films and what to do with your films, how to make your films travel. I'm going to allow my panel to introduce themselves shortly. But I think for their own interest's sake, I'm just going to ask a bit of questions, and I want you to raise your hand if it's relevant to you. So, who here has been to film festivals in South Africa, outside of South Africa? Just raise your hands by way of hand so we can see. And then who here is a filmmaker? You've produced a film, you've written a film, you've got a film. Okay. Who here has produced a short film before or are interested in doing short films? Okay, so you know the room. We're trying to read the room a bit. Okay, cool. So welcome everyone. I know this is going to be a very enlightening discussion. We're doing it in English. So if you do want to ask a question, please do ask in English as well for the sake of our panel. And I'm going to start off by allowing the panel to introduce themselves. They're going to say who they are, their name, their title, and the film organization or festival that they're from.
Hello, thank you very much for being here. I'm very delighted about this invitation to get to know what this part of the South African industry is like, and delighted to share and hope I make new acquaintances. My name is Dorothee Wenner. I work for the Berlin Film Festival. This is considered one of the biggest film festivals in the world. It depends on how you count and where you count. For instance, audience number in Berlin is much higher than in Cannes. Our big competitor, then there is Venice. So it's like these three festivals are considered to be the biggest in the world. And my designation within the festival is to be the delegate for films from Sub-Saharan Africa. This sounds like a weird title, I agree. It means basically that I try throughout the year to get an overview what is produced in the various sub-Saharan African countries. Alert filmmakers who forget about the Berlin Film Festival to send me a link when it's time. It is my duty also to sometimes watch films with my colleagues to see where in our festival they would be best programmed. And advise my colleagues, alert them, well, this is a super cool, interesting film from Botswana, from Ghana, from South Africa, from Congo. Please take an extra special look. I think this stands out for something new. Besides, I'm affiliated with Berlinale Talents, an organization that we closely partner with the Durban Film Festival. And I'm on the jury of the World Cinema Fund, which is a fund associated with the Berlin Film Festival.
Hi, everyone. My name is Nhlanhla, and I'm the program manager for the Joburg Film Festival. Try not to confuse it with the Josie Film Festival. We are the new kid on the block. We've been around since 2016, and yeah, we're growing. We are, especially this year, we're just expanding in unimaginable ways. Yeah, that's it for now.
Hello, my name is Chipo Zhou. I'm the artistic director for the Durban International Film Festival, which I think is the biggest film festival in South Africa, as well as in the region and arguably on the continent. We do quite a lot of development work within our festival, which is to say that our main and primary focus is developing filmmakers in order to grow the industry on the continent. I think I'll talk a little bit more about that as the panel progresses. I also sit on the Short Film Conference Board, which is the representative of short film festivals across the globe, and I am the African representative. And I think I'm also going to delve a little bit more into the growing short film industry and what that can do for us as South Africans.
Hi everyone, and thank you for coming. My name is Mandise and I'm the festival director for the Encounters South African International Documentary Festival. It's, I think, the second oldest festival in the country. We just had our 21st edition, and it's one of the few documentary festivals in the African region. So Encounters has been around for a long time, and we've produced our own films through the Close Encounters Lab. We profile South African films, and we form international links so that we can create opportunities for South African filmmakers. Yeah, we run various programs, and it's a national film festival, so we run it in Cape Town and in Johannesburg at the same time. And yeah, we'll speak more about our programs as well.
Thank you so much, guys. So, yes, let's give them a hand. We are very honored to have you here. So I'm going to ask them as many questions as I think is relevant and important, some stuff that we've discussed beforehand, but then we are going to allow for about 20, 30 minutes of questions. So if there is anything that I haven't covered, please save them, and then we'll allow you to ask questions directly to the panel. Okay, so I think we're going to start off by just what the profile of your different film festivals are. What are you looking for? What is the type of content that you're interested in? What are the themes that you're interested in? What do you bin immediately when you see it? So what do you not want to see? So I think it's important, first of all, just to say this is the kind of content we're looking for, and then perhaps you can speak a little bit about your submissions requirements, your timelines, how you hate those lastminute.com entries, you know, and why people shouldn't do that. Just a little bit of detail around that. So anyone can start, but
Okay. We are a curated film festival, so that means we go out there to try and find content. It makes our job quite daunting because you just never know who's got what and where and what at what point. However, we work very closely with, so our festival creative director is Pedro Pimenta. I'm sure some of you are familiar with him. And we try and look, you know, across the African continent primarily. We want to create a space where African film can have a voice and where they can, you know, be respected as well. And that's our primary mandate. However, we do look for excellence in filmmaking. So we don't just take anything because it's African. Our content ratio is 60-40, so we're looking at 60 African films, and we program 40% of our work comes from the rest of the globe. We run our program up until around the 15th of September. That's when we close it off. Our festival takes place in November. Specifically this year, we're running a 6-day program from the 19th to the 24th of November. And I mean, everybody cringes when I say this, but we're moving into, you know, Sandton is going to be our hub, and primarily because we are connected to Discorp, which happens to be one of the biggest markets in and around Africa. So, you know, we just want to make it easier for people to be able to access the festival that way. Yeah, I think that's it for now.
Okay, so the Durban International Film Festival is an international festival. We do promote African content to a great degree. We are striving, we haven't got there yet. This year we had over 40% African content. We are striving for a 50-50 African and international content. The idea is to not only take out the products coming from our continent, but to also give access to excellent works of art within the film industry that are coming from across the globe that we may not necessarily be able to access through our commercial spaces. Our festival happens in July, usually between in the middle of July to the end of July. It's a 10-day festival. This year we celebrated 40 years, and it ran from the 18th to the 28th of July. Our application window opens in October, or at the end of October, and usually closes at the end of February. We do have concessions, particularly for South African filmmakers, to submit their films right up until around mid-April, but that's just to cater for the projects that are still in post-production. But we do encourage that if you have a project that's already in post and that's as close to the final product as possible, that you submit even earlier so that we can have a sense of what the film is. And sometimes we do accept films that have been submitted as rough cuts in that way. We do look for, obviously, excellent films, but we also have different platforms that we've opened up that cater to not just the established filmmakers, but for the emerging filmmakers, because we believe that for the industry to grow, these emerging filmmakers who may not necessarily have experience, but have potential to become really good artists in their own right, deserve that platform to be noticed, deserve a platform for their work to be critiqued by their peers as well as by audiences, in order for them to develop their craft a lot more. This also happens within our DFM and Isipetu programs, which is the Durban Film Mart, where we have the Finance Forum, which is a forum where producers get to pitch completed projects to potential financiers so that they can get their works out there. We have what is called Jumpstart. We have Talents, which is the Durban Talents Campus. These are developmental labs where directors and writers get to have their projects mentored and developed. We also have a partnership with the Realness Lab. They also mentor producers and directors and work with up-and-coming artists, filmmakers within the African continent to develop our industry. We've had a lot of our filmmakers go through the various labs that we have, and they've had some great successes within our festival as well. We have this year, last year we launched what is called the Isipetu Hub, which is also a development space, which we partnered with the KwaZulu-Natal Film Commission, where we started isiZulu script writing workshops. The idea is to develop more films that are written in our own local languages that are accessible, but that are also of an international quality, so we can showcase what we have regionally to the world. The different labs have different opening and closing times for the application period, and that can be accessed via our website and our social media pages. But that's usually between November and Feb. So if you look out for our pages during that time, you can see and you can apply. It's very important that you take your application seriously, even if you are an established filmmaker, because what we found sometimes is we get projects that look like they have great potential, and we can see that the people who have applied, the names behind the application, are also people who have great experience behind them that can really take these projects forward. But because sometimes the applications are not filled out as completely and as thoroughly as they should be, that they are passed by for other applicants. And so it's really important that you really take your time to understand the questions, to really answer as accurately and as thoroughly as possible the brief that is required for your applications. It's really important for us to see that. We're hoping to continue to grow our networks, and so it is quite important for us to be able to access the different filmmakers from the different regions within our country. Thank you.
Thanks, Chipo. So Encounters runs in June, and our call should be opening in the next month. And we have a very limited program because we showcase South African and international documentaries, but we always endeavor to have 50% local content. The program is very small. It's about 40 films minimum, at the most 50 films. So we become quite selective about the documentaries we select alongside award-winning or award-nominated films from various countries. But we do aim for diversity in our program, and we do provide a platform for student films, for short and mid-length films. So we're quite flexible with our film lengths. Our call opens next month, as I said, and we accept rough cuts. So you're welcome to approach us anytime with your project. Because we're such a small team, we welcome people emailing us or phoning us and meeting us about their film projects. I think one of the key advantages of being at Encounters is that it's a public-facing documentary festival, so we really aim to have public attendance at the screenings, which we think we're very successful with. We work very hard at profiling our films in the media, so over a month or two of the festival period, we get a lot of coverage around the films on the program, the films reviewed, and it just raises awareness about South African documentaries, which really promotes our industry. And I think the second advantage is that a lot of international festivals that are looking for African content would look at Encounters program. So oftentimes films that have premiered at Encounters get picked up by other international festivals. Of course, we don't have a problem if you premiere your festival at the Berlinale or at IDFA. It's good PR for us, but we would like South African premieres, which we share with DIFF in a partnership arrangement because we are so close scheduled. Encounters is in June and DIFF is in July, so you wouldn't have a problem having your South African premiere at Encounters and DIFF as per arrangement. And as I've mentioned before, we run the Close Encounters Lab, which has produced about 48 films over the last 20 years. We run producers labs. We've done pitching forums with Al Jazeera and other broadcasters. We've had a lot of international partnerships over the years. So I think Encounters is a platform that one can use to really elevate your film to other platforms and reach the public. We do a lot of outreach screenings. So we use the Bertha Movie House in Khayelitsha and the Bertha Cinema in Mowbray, and we have the Joburg screenings as well at Rosebank, the Bioscope, and we sometimes have outreach screenings in Soweto. So if you're really focused on reaching a wider audience, a wider community, and launching your outreach or your impact strategy, your audience strategy, Encounters would be a great place to start. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm picking up on what Mandise has just said. I'm the one who is really closely following what these guys are showing on their festivals. That is part of my research for the Berlin Film Festival. So I'm giving you a few numbers. We have various sections. We have the competition, of course. Then our newly appointed artistic director, Carlo Chatrian, invented a new section where I made a joke. I said he stole from Encounters because that is now the new name of our new section, including documentaries will be shown there, so but not exclusively. We have the panorama, which has kind of an art house profile. We have the forum that goes into innovative borderline art movies that has a subsection that shows work that can be also a film performance, can be film and fine arts. We have a section that I find is very relevant to all of us that is called Generation. I think we sometimes forget that we have very, very big responsibilities as festivals to nurture the next generation of film lovers who understand what cinema is as opposed to looking in your cell phone. Then we have a homage, a retrospective, and a lot of side programs, which I will not talk about here at this profiling. I said a bit in the beginning. However, wrapping up, when it comes to numbers, it might sound odd, but I think it is difficult for us to count the number of films because all of my colleagues, we have about 40 programmers, all of us go to festivals, and when they see films at the festival, of course, they also look all the time, well, is this a film that could come into our festival? We've had about 6,000 official submissions, but I think we choose from around 10,000 films yearly. 400 will make it into the program. 450 about are screened at the European film market. That is an international film market, and European only refers to that it takes place in Europe. These numbers can be scary and whatnot, so I won't continue, except that our deadline, our call for entries opens on 17th of September and will last until end of November. The application for Berlinale Talents is on until 2nd of September. I happily explain if somebody has questions referring to Berlinale Talents and what is important for the application. What I think is very important refers to what is the role of festivals. So I think our festival, if I'm speaking for Berlinale, yes, we do have this focus on having a large local audience, which is a huge difference to many other festivals that you go to. Like, I don't mean to bad talk about Cannes. I think they have an excellent program and it's wonderful, but those of you who've been to Cannes, you would know that the Cannes people leave the city to rent out their apartments for very high rates, to have film professionals coming in. So when you see a film in Cannes, it's mainly within the film fraternity. Whereas we have in Berlin 42 cinemas and we have about 500,000 attendees in 10 days, which is quite a lot. And we are very proud of that. So how to look, you know, that you reach out to an audience is one of the key points that we cater for very much. And when it comes to criteria, that is a difficult question. I think all my colleagues here would agree to define them in theory. When you look at what a film festival is like, I think what is the defining criteria with most of my colleagues, we very often disagree on a single film, and I say it's the most wonderful thing I've seen in the past, and they say, oh, you've gone bananas. So it's like normal daily, I think you also have this kind of discussions. But this is very important because why are we doing this is not only for the red carpet, but I think one of our responsibilities is to really develop the language of cinema forward, to expose our audiences not only to the next big grossing commercial success. I'm not saying that I don't like it, but to find the balance which is so interesting and which can be defined only according to the films we are getting. So we are completely depending on filmmakers who have ideas, who are willing to explore where cinema in 21st century can go to.
Awesome, thank you so much. So Chipo, you said earlier that you're on the global, do you mind saying what the name of the documentary board is, the official name?
It's the Short Film Conference. It's a body that represents short film festivals across the globe.
Okay, so in terms of what their sort of entry mechanisms are and what the advantages are to entering that festival, could you speak a bit about that? And then also, I know you've seen some of our short films, so I'd like to hear what you think of that, and would those be good enough to enter there? And, you know, just a little bit more about that.
Okay, so the Short Film Conference Board is a board that is made up of festival directors and programmers that work for short film festivals or film festivals that also support short filmmakers. And a lot of short film festivals are a part of that conference space as a way to connect, as a way to develop the short film industry, which is actually quite big in its own right. I know a lot of us, particularly from this side of the world, find short films as a gateway to kind of making feature films. But having been exposed to the different short film festivals across the world, as well as sitting on that board and attending some of the film festivals, Clermont-Ferrand in France being one of them, which is one of the biggest short film festivals in the world, I've discovered that there's actually a whole industry on its own, and people are actually making a living and becoming acclaimed directors in their own right, just within the short film space. And being a part of that space gives us access to all the different networks and information around how to get yourself out there as a short filmmaker, how to make money within that space and get yourself recognized. There are a lot of workshops, a lot of presentations. When I was at Clermont-Ferrand, for example, I mean, all of the screenings were packed. Their opening night had 3 screenings. So one was, I think, at 6 p.m., the other one was about 8 p.m., and the other one was around about 11 p.m. And it was the same opening slate of films. But I was in the 11 p.m. slot, and it was packed. People were queuing right round in circles just to watch short films. So there is a big market for these short films. There's also, with the digital movement, the telecoms, there's quite a lot of money to be made, and I think we haven't really fully explored that. So
what you're saying is, arguably, as a short filmmaker, you can make a living, you know, if you access the right festivals, you get your name out there, you access funding. By the way, we're doing our digital workshop tomorrow morning, where we were going to discuss this a bit more, but that's basically those sort of platforms and streaming platforms are where those short films happily live and thrive.
Yes, definitely. And there is a market for this. But the information isn't as readily available, it isn't as out there, particularly on this continent. And I think me sitting on this board this year was to try and open up that space. So as DIFF, we're also working towards a few workshops in the coming edition. We're really going to concentrate on the short films in order to open up that space. We're hoping that Africa can also get into that space, because short films are accessible for us financially. They're a lot easier to make, because they don't cost as much as feature films, and so,
but
well,
I mean,
not all of them.
It's also a different narrative style, and so there's a bit of craft that's involved there. So,
yes, it is.
So tell me, what did you think? Because most of the filmmakers, writers, directors on our short film slate of emerging first-time filmmakers that are mentored. What did you think of some of the films that you've seen?
Wow. Okay, you've put me on the spot right there. I watched some really beautiful films this morning. I have to be honest. I can't quite remember the titles, but I watched one. The first one I watched was about a scientist who was experimenting in genetics. It was quite beautiful, and I found it very interesting, and I think it's universal. And it's something that I think would really do well on the global stage. It's a story that you can see, and you can actually see it as a Hollywood production, or you can even see it as an indie production. It's very universal, and the way they told it, and it was shot really well. I think they've done well with it, and I think it can go places. I just, I hope, I don't know who the filmmakers are, but I hope that they do enter a lot more short film festivals and get into that space. And for a first-time director, that was very impressive. Actually, I think they're going places. The other one was a comedy, and I was laughing throughout. And I always enjoy watching films with audiences, because as a programmer, you watch a lot of films on your own. And sometimes you don't quite see what you see when you engage with others and how they respond and react to a film. And so that was also really good, because the audiences were laughing. And if you can get your story to be appreciated by your intended audiences, then you've done a really good job. And because I've watched a lot of films, not just in South Africa, I also realized that these are very universally acceptable stories, and they've done well. So the future is bright for our South African filmmakers.
Encouragement indeed. So Dorothee, I just want to ask you around and anyone else who can answer this, you know, when you've got your finished product, you're like, right, this is my film. I don't just want it to have a life here in its home space in South Africa. I want it to live beyond that. Is going with a sales agent the way to go? How do you start? How do you start to plan your strategy once you have a finished product?
Sales agents have become increasingly important. I think sometimes they are in competition with us programmers. So because some of the sales agents, when they are really, really, really powerful, they have their way of saying, oh, the film is not going to be ready for Berlin. And that's their way of telling us they want to go to Cannes. So it's like a language in itself. I start at a little bit earlier in your question, and I think maybe also relevant for those filmmakers who are here in the room. In my experience as a programmer, what has really changed over the past 2, 3, 4, 5 years, because the media diversity has increased and is just like so fastly growing beyond what you know, what all we have thought to experience, I don't know, 5 or 10 years ago. So when you're making a film, I think it's way too late by the time you finish to think of what you want to do with the film. That is what I think is the difference today. So all of us here, we are working for festivals. So a film that you want to bring into the international festival arena, you better start thinking of all the advantages, also the disadvantages, if you want to go into that direction. If you want to make a short film which is appealing, which is commercial, which has an audience appeal, and you're saying, well, I'm just a filmmaker, I don't want to go into all this stress finding money and funds, you might get into, you know, you say, I'm going into YouTube and I'm just playing around. Or you say you go into the commercial side, which I think is very, very site-specific. I think here in South Africa, maybe more so than in some other African countries, you have big potential and big possibilities, but very often these films, which work very, very well commercially, here, let's say on kykNET, would not have a big chance in the festival circuit. This is not saying this film is better than that film. That is something that I think has to be very clear in the filmmakers' or producers' mind. There is very good content for that kind of target audience or that platform where you want to go to. When you want to go into the festival arena, it's completely different criteria that we are working from. Much harder to make money, very, very difficult. You can get fame, and you practically have to have a kind of an artist kind of vision and want. If you are lucky to attach a sales agent to your next project, it can be absolutely brilliant and can help you anywhere else, because us, the film programmers, we do listen to sales agents. We have to listen. It can be a super match, like a happy marriage, and if it's an arranged marriage, it can be hell. So please look into the contract decently before you attach to a sales agent. Either find another filmmaker who has been working with this particular sales agent before, because you cannot just give away all your rights, or you look into the contract and the sales agent, you know, is paying his or her trips to MIPCOM and to film festivals, and you never know what he or she will actually do for your film. It can be that it's magic and it works out, I think, for instance, maybe Jenna is here or David, they would explain what their experience was with Match Factory, a sales agent that picked up Flatland, and I think they've been doing great. They have this reputation of being big in the festival circuit. And then you have more that go into mix of festival and TV market. For short films, it's very rare. So I want to bring up maybe, because I understand there are many short filmmakers here, that you have agencies that I think do a decent job. Maybe some of my colleagues here disagree, but if, for instance, you would go to Short Reel Depot, are you familiar with that? So it's a platform that does the festival submissions for you. They alert you which festivals are on, where are the deadlines. You pay an initial fee, and then you have the chance of saying, well, yes, I want to go to that festival because that profile of the festival fits to my film. Maybe you did something on ecology, you did something on animals, you did a horror film, you did a fantasy film. So there are festivals, there are so many festivals that it really takes a lifetime to understand where you want to go to when it comes to short films. I think these Short Film Depot, Within a Box, and other distributors for you would be the best way of going into that direction.
So also just, anyone can answer this, just around the, I'm going to just give us 2 minutes to discuss this very quickly because I want to open up to questions. What are the costs of some of these festivals, sort of ballpark costs? If I'm writing a script, I'm going into production, I need to know I need to put X amount aside towards film festival entries, and then just a couple of pitfalls to watch out for. So if everyone can just in a minute and a half, just, you know, a little bit of advice around cost, a little bit of advice around pitfalls. You can start, Mandise.
It's difficult for me to talk about costs because they vary from festival to festival, depending on whether you are at like tier 1 type festival like Berlinale.
Can you specifically talk to your festival? So are there costs associated with your own festivals?
We have no entry fees for South African filmmakers, but I know other film festivals will require an entry fee. So we don't charge anything really, but I know that if you're doing international entries, it's a whole big budget that you have to draw up that includes entry fees, technical accommodation, marketing. So that's something that you really have to think about, perhaps maybe during production of your film.
And you, Chipo, does DIFF have an entry fee? And what are the costs associated? Are there any challenges or pitfalls to watch out for?
I think we don't have entry fees as well, and I think it's just as similar as encounters. I think what's important to note are the rules and regulations. So when you're planning your festival tour for your film, you have to look through the different festivals that you want to submit your film to, and you have to look at what the requirements are. So for example, with the Durban International Film Festival, we take South African premieres if it's an international film. If it's a South African film, we might take a South African film that's really great, but you can't get into competition. We do want to have the premieres. So if you're hoping for your film to get into the DIFF, and you want a chance to get into competition, that you might take a pass, for example, with Joburg, which is happening this year in September, and say, okay, maybe I want to wait for next year, but also there's no guarantees that you get into competition because the programmers then have to sit down and make those decisions.
So it is a bit of a gamble, you know, if you kind of weigh it up and you're like, I want to get into this film festival and that one, but they have different requirements, and you kind of have to weigh up what's the best for your project.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So you have to do your research. I think research is very important. So whatever it is, when you're planning and you're saying, okay, this is a production that I want to get into, I think Dorothee touched quite a bit on that. And you really have to think about the long-term goals. Do I want to go commercial? If I want to go commercial, who is the likely sales agent who might pick up my project? How do I get in touch? You need to be in spaces that can allow you to get as much information as possible to make informed decisions, because it's very easy to think that okay, I've got this great idea, we're going to execute it well, and definitely it'll make money. I'm going to take it to kykNET, and kykNET says, actually, this is not a project that we're looking into, and suddenly you find yourself with a film and nowhere to kind of show it. So it's very important to know what your audience is and where you want to take your project before you actually embark on it, because that will inform a lot of the decisions that you take in terms of how much of a budget you need to market the project, and the trajectory that it will take. Will you start with the festival circuit before going commercial? Will you go straight into commercial? And what are the requirements for the different spaces?
Do you have any entry fees or requirements as well, Nhlanhla?
No, we don't. We don't have any entry fees. However, what we do have is a cash prize for all of the premieres that come to our festival. And I mean, depending on how you want to position your film, you could look at that as a way of, taking your film to the next step, because that marketing a film is quite a lot of money. And, if your film premieres at our festival, you get an automatic entry into our competition.
What's the cash prize?
It's 100,000 rands for a film, the best film, and we're looking at 50,000 rands for best documentary. So, we do award filmmakers for reaching out to us. We also, we don't have a particular criteria, but your film has got to be really good, to be part of the festival, because we are all about excellence. We're all about promoting excellence in filmmaking. And that's basically it. I find that a lot of filmmakers think of film festivals as an afterthought. And this is something that you need to build into your strategy as you're fundraising for your film. Start thinking about where you want to place it, where you want it to go, so that it can at least start developing a life of its own.
I really like what you're saying there, that it cannot be an afterthought if you need a strategy. I think this is the reason why we invited this esteemed panel to be here, so that you can, at this point in time, start embarking on a strategy and devising a strategy. What are your entry fees, if there are any, Dorothee, and what do filmmakers need to watch out for?
We have shockingly high entry fees. I want to hide. It's €175 per feature film, so it's incredibly high. You want to really give it a second thought. But having said that, we need this kind of entry fee it's part of how we fund ourselves, so it's not to be mean. We try not to exclude ways, and there are, if we are convinced that this is a film that might be for our program, we have ways to chase you. So having said that, when it comes to prizes, what I want to add, what my colleagues have said before, when you do the strategy, think that the festival circuit usually runs for a year, maybe another year. It has been speeded up tremendously in the past. All festivals are kind of crazy for world premieres. Do we agree? Yeah. I even know, like, some village festivals. We have film festivals, like in every village in Germany, literally. They are also, we have 3 world premieres. I think this is getting a little bit over the top, and some festivals have become extremely creative into creating new premiere statuses, like the MENA premiere, the international premiere, the European premiere. So be sure the one that you want to show your film first in, and if you have a chance that is a springboard festival, that works very nicely. Second, if you didn't get through into your dream festival that you wanted to go to, maybe that is a nice one, and don't give up. There are other ways of also reaching, for instance, the special profile film festivals. I'm giving you an example. You know, I was talking to this one sales agency, and they said, well, all these guys have never had any luck with their film. An American documentary on some people doing air guitar. The film wasn't really like to my liking. I hope nobody's Googling now. But the fact is that your film can have a life outside the festival, for which you only use to strategize the festival in the beginning, and then attach yourself to a circuit where, given the profile of your film, it might have a huge afterlife that is maybe even bigger than festivals. So festivals is one wonderful way, but there is another one. So this air guitar film found like a huge market, because suddenly these people in America found out that there are a lot of air guitar fans in Singapore and elsewhere. So this film traveled and was seen by many more people than, you know, sometimes you go to a world-class festival, I don't mention one now, and then you go and you're one of 300 films, and you're sitting there with 15 people in your world premiere. This is also one side of it. So be very cool in which way you want to go. There are options within the festival circuit. Use it smartly. And if you're not clear, then look at what kind of films does this XYZ particular festival show. Be smart, don't spend all your inheritance money on entry fees. There are a lot of film festivals that live off, you know, city marketing, for instance. So they are very happy to take your 150 euros or whatnot for a film that isn't even eligible. Because you haven't read the rules, you pay it and you won't get it back.
Okay. 175 euros, glory. Okay. I'm going to open up the floor. We have a few minutes left. If you have any burning questions, please raise your hands, and we will get a microphone to you. While we're doing that, I also just want to ask the panel if you can weave into your answers. Does it help for our local filmmakers to engage in co-productions with our co-production treaties? Does that give your film a bit more status? If you can just weave that answer into that as well. So whose hand was up? Okay,
Hi.
cool.
Quick one for you, Kay. Where's this festival on this panel? Can you just fill in that gap? Because my brain is kind of tipping over, because I want to know how you chose your films for this festival. Thank you.
For Silwerskerm.
Thank you.
Okay, so Silwerskerm, I'm speaking on behalf, and maybe I should not do that because I'm a facilitator. Is one of the organizers here. Ricky, or Crystal, or anyone else here? Not yet. Okay, let me just answer very quickly. So, Silwerskerm started off as a short film festival, and people would submit their short films, and you get a certain amount of money, and you get mentored into the process. So that goes out. Annika, am I correct that it goes out in like January, February every year? No? So it's open up wide to everyone. We want to create a bit more awareness around it. So it's sort of the entry point. But then we also feature films as well. Because it's an Afrikaans film festival, we look at Afrikaans language films, but it doesn't necessarily have to have been produced through Mnet or kykNET. It's open up to, you know, filmmakers across South Africa. Yeah. And it's grown a lot. Jan said this morning that the first Silwerskerm had one film.
I forgot something when it comes to your strategizing, and also to maybe making this 75 euros sound less shocking. So there are ways for you, for instance, you know, we closely work with all the film commissions in the world and with film schools. So, for instance, we have a special reduced tariff that the film school can pay. So the film school pre-selects 5 or 10 films that would be sent through the film school to our festival. Or, you know, I'm always writing also to your film commissions. So in this country, it happens to be NFVF. So you say, well, I want to get recommended through you, and then you can find your way into our festival through NFVF. So you need to push and use your local facilitators that have access, I'm sure, also to all of your countries, so that when you then say, well, this is my way, this is where I want to go, NFVF is a very key and important organization for you to get films out.
Awesome. Another question? Okay.
My name's David Max Brown. I'm actually here wearing two hats, I guess. So I'm currently head of the After Film School here in Cape Town, so very glad to hear what Dorothee just said. But I'm also a film producer. One of the questions, just you asked who we are in the room, I'd actually like to know, are there any local or international sales agents here at this festival or in this room?
Not that I know of.
Yeah. And then, sort of relating to Monica's question, with my film, Nume Skoli, which actually screened here a couple of years ago, we found it then very difficult to then get into other South African film festivals, which I found really debilitating, especially because there wasn't that opportunity to then, for the film, it was great to have it screened here, but then we didn't have then the exposure to the sales companies that do come to, say, Durban or to the Johannesburg Film Festival. And I think I'm really glad to hear that, Encounters and Durban have got that camaraderie, But I think we need to have that amongst all of our festivals. I find it just quite ridiculous that we have this, we need it to be a world premiere, or we need it to be a South African premiere in order for our films to go from Silwerskerm to other festivals. And then I also wanted, if I can quickly, also just talking about, taking your film from the local stage to the international stage. It is so difficult because we don't have any experienced sales companies in this country really, although one or two are coming up. We need to train and develop that. But there are also some other issues that are related here in that although my film would not have been made without kykNET and mNET and everything that the individuals who were involved put into the film, there are also sort of structural issues involved. Like if you sell your film, you are selling African rights and you think, that's okay, I'll sell my African rights, why not? I've still got the rest of the world. And then you find that the buyers are saying, actually no, when we mean global, we mean global. And you've already sold Africa, so thank you, goodbye, next. And that's quite a big sort of problem that I don't know if that's still, it's still quite an issue for us in getting into the international market with a film that might have screened here, and then you could be stuck if you've sold your rights in that way.
Well, I think to answer your question around the film festivals working together, I know that there's already been talks amongst the different film organizations and film festivals to work more jointly together. In fact, it started at DIFF, I think. Am I correct, Chipo? And there is an initiative that Silwerskerm is part of to partner with the other regions so that we can be more collaborative. Are there any other questions?
Yeah, I wanted to ask, because Nhlanhla mentioned the high standard that they require for films to enter Joburg Film Festival, but I know that Joburg Film Festival is the only other festival that actually pays for screening rights. So films get paid to be screened there as opposed to other festivals where filmmakers actually pay to get in. Can you please speak more about that?
Yeah, I think part of what we'd like to do is it's also about recognizing the amount of work that goes into a film, and we know that not all the films are going to be entered into the competition, and not all of them are going to win. So it's our little way of saying we'll pay you a screening fee for the film to be part of our festival. And yeah, that's just a little token that we share with filmmakers. So yeah, just keep that in mind when you submit that we will pay you to screen your work.
That's amazing. Okay, so we have run out of time, but our panel is still here to answer questions. I think, just to summarize, you need to think early on of your strategy. You need to plan way ahead in terms of your budget, and you can never give up. And then the other advice that Dorothy gave was marry a millionaire. So you can actually afford to do all these things. But they are here, they're available to chat to you. This is why we brought them here. So if you have any other burning questions, please do come and speak to them. Thank you so much. And thank you to the panel.